What we've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. So you get what we had here last week, which is the way he wants it. Well, he gets it. I don't like it any more than you
do. Look at your young men fighting. Look at your women crying. Look at your young men dying the way they've always done before.
My hands are tied. Billions years from side to side, and the wars go on with brainwashed pride for the love of God and a human right. And all these things are swept aside by bloody hands. Time can't deny it, and are washed away by a genocide. And history hides the lies of our civil war.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and if you're not doing that little weird snaky move he does, I don't know what's wrong with you. And I'm joined, as always, by Sean Keenan.
Heidi ain't from Queens or Brooklyn. She's from Jersey.
The smelly part of that area. And Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and what's so civil about war anyway?
Look at that. You're like the Nietzsche of the group, I've always said.
Oh,
You know-
man, I just love it. You started the show with the mashup of two things I loved in high school, Cool Hand Luke and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, you do a little bit of what you
Guns
did.
N' Roses song where they sample from Cool Hand Luke.
No,
I had seen Cool Hand Luke before I had heard that song, and so for years I thought it was just some old lady talking. So imagine my surprise when I actually watched Cool Hand Luke and saw that it was an old gentleman.
A little old, white-haired, chubby guy.
Taking it off, boss. Taking it off.
He and Paul Newman had a failure to communicate.
Indeed, they did. As you could tell from the music, guys, or if you've, opened your eyes in the last, week, we're reviewing Captain America's Civil War, the latest in the multitude of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, and worlds are colliding at the same time, too, and I got a feeling we'll talk about that as well.
And after all this introductory talk, now I have a strange desire to see Falcon try to eat 50 eggs.
Ooh. He would not like that. He would, like Anthony Mackie's got that, listen, I'll play game as much as you want, but no. But no. So let's get into it, gentlemen. Before we get to the show proper here, we got to get down to one of the most important aspects of the show. We asked you guys to do it, and guess what? You sure enough done did it. So we'll have a couple for the next few weeks here, but keep them coming in. It helps us get us. And what am I talking about? That's right, 5-star reviews on iTunes, aka Humdingas.
Humdinger?
And this one is titled, believe it or not, "Gimme That 5-Star Humdinger." This is all very appropriate to what we got going on, guys. This is by, and I love this name, the Genji Ninja.
Oh, cool.
So I guess there's some sort of ginger-haired ninja out there someplace. Makes it a little bit tougher to hide. The big carrot top hanging out there and showing what's what. So, but nevertheless, I'm sure this ninja's plenty good at his job. And it reads as follows. In a world flooded with superheroes, he wrote it like this, not me. Flooded with superheroes and podcast, one podcast rises up and leads the pack. HMP. Join your hosts on a wild ride in reviewing the best and worst of each and every hero movie that comes across the silver screen. Play along with them on a game that will leave the younger generation asking, who? Come on, Star-Lord, the Stallone connection. Keep up the solid work, and I'll catch you at the next episode soon. That is by the Ninja. I can't even say it properly.
Gingy Ninja?
Ninja. Oh, jeez. Well, there's no A on the end, so I'm going to say that's Gingy Ninja.
Okay, I like it.
I don't know. I'm not a smart man. So, wait till you hear the one that we got next week. That one is... It's one of the great ones on the internet that is completely unpronounceable. So It's going to be a blast to see how I murder that one. Speaking of murder, we'd never want to murder anyone who would drop us an email. So at hearmoviepodcast@gmail.com, we got one from a listener. So let's take a look.
Smoothest segue yet there, Adam.
Not
Smooth,
bad, right?
smooth.
Not bad.
Nailed it.
It says, hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to say keep up everything you do. You guys are hilarious. I myself am an architect, and sometimes it's hard to keep the laughter in when I hear your podcast on a weekly basis. I can't wait to hear your Civil War podcast while I work on plans for a new IKEA in our town. And again, never stop doing what you're doing. You guys are excellent at what you do. Much love, Eric Morales. Eric, thanks for the email, buddy. And
a little advice, Eric. Lots of blue and yellow and straight lines.
Straight lines and all that stuff. I mean, you don't understand, Eric, the level of joy you're giving to so many white people. Everybody,
You're going to be responsible for dispensing more meatballs than anybody in your town.
Yeah, everybody loves IKEA, but white people really love IKEA to like a weird way. I don't know what it is. It's all the do-it-yourself.
Look here, Morales. Let me lay it down for you with the IKEA. You got to make it easier to get through that place. It is a maze unlike any other. It is a labyrinth of, but instead of corn, it is with poorly constructed furniture. Please, for the love of God, make it easier to get out of there.
Or at least point out because there are like shortcuts and stuff. It's like, hey, by the way, if you wanted to do just this, go this way. But they don't point it out to you because, God forbid, you get what you want and get the heck out of there.
And put the child care close to the cafeteria because you want to eat some meatballs with your kids, then shove them out of your face while you go shopping.
Get out of here, kids. I hate you. And that's, love Daddy Bruce. That's not good. But yes, you'll enjoy our Civil War conversation. And why don't we go ahead and get that started? Here is the trailer for Captain America: Civil War.
Buck, do you remember me?
Your mom's name is Sarah. You used to wear newspapers in your shoes.
You're a wanted man.
I don't do that anymore.
Well, the people who think you did are coming right now. And they're not planning on taking you alive.
Captain, while a great many people see you as a hero, there are some who'd prefer the word vigilante. You've operated with unlimited power and no supervision. That's something the world can no longer tolerate.
I know how much Bucky means to you. Stay out of this one. Please. You'll only make this worse.
You saying you'll arrest me?
There will be consequences.
Captain, you seem a little defensive. Well, it's been a long day. If we can't accept limitations, we're no better than bad guys. That's not the way I see it. Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth. I just want to make sure we consider all our options. Because people that shoot at you usually wind up shooting at me, too.
You know what's about to happen. Do you really want to punch your way out of this?
What do we do?
We fight. Sorry, Tommy. You know I wouldn't do this if I had any other choice. But he's my friend. So was I.
Everybody, that was the trailer for Captain America: Civil War, our new release review of this week. Directed by the Russo brothers, written by our favorites, Marcus and McFeely in the morning.
I love them.
Love him. And here's the IMDb plotline. Political interference in the Avengers' activities causes a rift between former allies Captain America and Iron Man. That's a real succinct way to put a pretty complicated plot. It stars everyone you know. Have you seen a Marvel movie? They're in this, and we added some more. We'll talk about them.
Oh, man, do we have, what's his name, Greg Clark? What's his name? The guy that plays Coulson?
Clark Gregg, yeah.
Not in this.
Oh man, what about Samuel L. Jackson? I love him in these movies.
Listen, if I could reach through the internet and slap you in the face, I would.
And I love that Mark Ruffalo can't get enough of that Hemsworth guy. I can't wait to see this movie.
You know what? You're lucky this is a family-friendly podcast. Why don't you read us something about whatever you wrote? Go ahead and encapsulate 100 issues into 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Civil War, the proper Civil War, was a 7-issue miniseries. It was published in 2007, spanned on into 2008, and it was written by frequent flyer here on HMP, Mark Miller. I think I've referenced before that Mark Miller keeps trying to write Watchmen, and Civil War was kind of another of his attempts at that. It's a story where the government tries to take control of superheroes, facing resistance from a group of anti-establishment heroes that choose to be outlaws rather than serve as a pawn for politicians. The whole comic book Civil War started with the villain Nitro on a rampage, only to be stopped by C-list Steve Ditko creation Speedball. Now, the face-off results in an explosion in Stamford, Connecticut that kills a whole bunch of school kids. And in response to this tragedy, the government passes something called the Superhero Registration Act. I'm sure that Mark Miller thought maybe that would be a little bit of an allegory for the Patriot Act that many thought overstepped constitutional boundaries in the aftermath of the events of September 11th. And no, listeners, this isn't an invitation for us all to tell people to wake up and learn the real truth in America. I'm just talking about the comics today. But the Superhuman Registration Act was a legislative bill that required the mandatory registration of any person in the United States with superpowers. Tony Stark and Dr. Reed Richards led the side of the pro-registration superheroes, while Captain America leads the anti-registration side. Spider-Man, he initially sides with Tony Stark and eventually joins the team of Captain America. Public sentiment towards the superheroes plummeted after that incident in Stamford, which also, just to make sure Mark Miller had all his current events covered, was part of a reality TV show. Now, Tony Stark felt that it's reasonable for heroes to have proper training and oversight, whereas Captain America, alongside Luke Cage and Falcon, argued that heroes required secrecy in order to protect aspects of their normal life. This kind of reminds me of a few pointless debates I used to allow myself to be drawn into about the NSA reading people's email. Never again, Mike Giamo, never again. Anyway, back to our story. S.H.I.E.L.D. assumed the brunt of enforcing the act under director Maria Hill, but soon found out it's not so easy to impose rules on the likes of Captain America and a man with bulletproof skin against their will. The pro-registration side attempted to locate and arrest any super person who was not registered, and Iron Man managed to convince Spider-Man to publicly reveal his identity on network television. The X-Men were officially neutral in the conflict, which was convenient because their movie rights were officially with Fox by this time. Also, several superpowered folks decided to flee to Canada in order to escape the whole conflict and to presumably cause Alpha Flight to become the most overstaffed supergroup in the multiverse. Now, things did escalate when Cap sucker punched Iron Man while approaching him with a metaphorical olive branch, proving you should never trust a jingo. Now, when Spidey found out that Mr. Fantastic was planning to send unregistered heroes to the negative zone, he jumped ship and joined Cap's team. In a final showdown, Cap was getting ready to take down Iron Man for good when a bunch of New York's bravest and finest non-powered heroes took down Cap, and he surrendered, effectively marking the end of Civil War. Tony Stark was declared the winner and put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., while Cap was taken to jail. The aftermath led to the apparent assassination of Captain America, though he was really just sent spiraling through time. I mean, who hasn't been there? Huh. And multiple teams started calling themselves the Avengers. Norman Osborn gets way too much power, and Reed Richards takes a leave of absence from the superhero business. We're now on the verge of Civil War II in the comics that will somehow pit Carol Danvers against Tony Stark, the cause of which is yet to be determined, but sure to be polarizing. Only time will tell if it's as memorable as Civil War, but I dare to say it's far less likely to inspire a movie of the scope and magnitude of the one we're going to discuss today.
I think they're going to fight over who's prettier. It's a toss-up.
Civil War to me is that this is literally the run that got me back into comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 2007, I had not picked up or bought a comic book in years and years, and Civil War got me right back into it.
And, I kind of had a different response. Like, I felt like Civil War was a good concept with poor execution. I got a little, a little disinterested in it after the initial issue or two. And there were so many tie-ins, it was just impossible to stay on top of everything.
The key to it was, because the Civil War miniseries itself was nothing spectacular, but what they were doing in New Avengers was where the fun stuff was happening. Because that's the group that was constantly on the run from the government, and they had to hide, and they're constantly going up against the heroes that had already registered. And it was really fun. It was a good read for a long time.
And, personally, I can't stand that period of time in the comics when Speedball became Penance, and that all kind of goes back to Civil War. So I think that soured me on it a little.
The worst redesign ever.
Let's take one of these really fun characters from one of these really fun groups that you can just read and enjoy and make him the most 90s version of a super character in 2008.
That's funny. You should say that because it's the first thing I thought about is like, oh, hey, look, Marvel has its own The Crow now.
Exactly. Oh, his suit has spikes on the inside, so he feels pain every time he puts it on.
Guys, did you see comic book sales in the 90s? They were amazing.
Yes, they were.
Did you see how many people actually read them? Not so many.
Shh, keep that down. Well, hey, no less than what are reading now.
Oh, man. I sometimes I like to go through my 90s comics and realize there's like 12 pages of comic and 4 covers somehow.
I got 16 foil covers with this one. Sweet.
This one's die cut.
Oh, I love it. Love it. I can see my reflection in it. I could comb my hair and read it later. That's great. Thanks, comic.
Before we get into the nitty gritty of this, can we look at an overview of all of this first? Because there is so much that we have to talk about with this movie.
Okay, lay it on us. What do you got?
So just in broad strokes. And first, before we go any further, if you're a regular listener, you already know this. But to new listeners, we are going to spoil everything from this point forward.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the movie, come back, and listen to this episode.
And this movie made $180 million in the States alone this weekend. If you haven't seen it by now, who are you?
Well, some people are busy, Adam. Some people are busy.
Well, here's the thing. When it comes down to stuff like this, you make time, doggone it.
And it was Mother's Day weekend. Maybe they had to go see that Julia Roberts movie instead with their mom.
Terrible Julia Roberts.
I know. Let's go see a Gary Marshall movie. That'll be way better, right? My mom... Listen,
I loved Laverne and Shirley.
Listen, my mom would have probably rather gone to see a Civil War than that garbage. So,
Well, we've already learned that you're second generation nerd, so that's not a big
but mom's not that. She got shoehorned into all this garbage. But
I can definitely assure you that if Shirley Jean was still alive, she would have picked Jennifer or what's her name again? I've already forgot her name. Pretty Woman over this.
Oh, Julia Roberts?
Yeah, I called her Jennifer Roberts.
Well, Jennifer Aniston is in it, so that's
oh boy. There's a twofer.
Matt reviewed it on the Film Find, so go listen to that episode.
The only thing that could have drug her to Civil War is if they had like CGI'd Christopher Reeves into it.
Ooh,
hello.
I'd watch that.
Or maybe Patrick Swayze.
So yeah, I mean, like,
I've got 5. I have 5 questions for you guys that I came up with today while going over my notes for Civil War. So here are my 5 questions for you. Question 1 in the overview of this thing. Has there been a trilogy where the third movie is the best movie in it?
Ooh.
Good. Oh, man, that's a toughie. I'm sure there has been, but I can't think of it right now. It's always the second movie that gets all the love.
Yeah, I couldn't think of one. The closest is
Godfather 3?
No.
Return of the Jedi, but I mean...
No,
well,
yeah,
I'll
no way.
This might be a little bit, and I guess if you count the other 2, it's still it's not this good a comparison. But Friday the 13th Part 3 and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. But then again, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. I mean, depending on who you are. I mean, I like the first one more than the third one, but I do like the third one. But Friday the 13th Part 3 is at least where Jason got the iconic hockey mask, and it was in 3D at the time, so.
Yeah, that actually was a pretty good move in that franchise.
Because that was honestly that's where Jason truly became Jason, that we kind of known as the icon that we see him as today.
And, it's sort of a low bar to set, but I probably like Revenge of the Sith better than The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones.
Fair enough.
To me, Phantom Menace is the best one of the three.
Well, but you're a big Jar Jar guy. I'm not.
Man, I love Jar Jar.
All about some Jar Jar. That guy was great.
So that's my first question for you guys. Second question. There are 12 superheroes in this movie. At any point, did it feel overstuffed like Batman and Robin to you?
No.
I didn't think it felt overstuffed, but I was also one of the people that thought Batman and Robin wasn't overstuffed. So, I give them both a pass. But yes, I will say that they were deftly woven together here. And it's kind of proven that I think the age of standalone hero movies is probably shuffling out the door at this point, at least with established characters.
Absolutely. The thing with me is that not only does it not feel overstuffed, it also feels like everything is at a good commensurate level with who that character is and how much screen time they have, because everybody's represented pretty darn well.
And it also helps that all of these, everybody here, with the exception of Black Panther, everybody here we've seen before, so there's not a whole lot to introduce us to. And they said, you know what, you can figure Black Panther out from just a couple of key moments in the movie, and they did that well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was like I always told people back in the day, the introduction of Hawkeye, it's like his story is just like, hey, here's Clint, he shoots stuff really well, moving on.
Yeah.
I'm a Arrow guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's about all they need. And so, I mean, and they kind of gave Black Panther that deal. It's just like he shows up and it's just like, look, the Black Panther thing has been in my family for blah, 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 blah. And, 4 lines later, guess what? I'm Black Panther, sucker. And he moves, and we move on.
And if I can kind of expand on that question, it does make me wonder, for the rare person who's never seen a Marvel film before, are they going to be okay with this movie? Because I don't know that it's so easy if you don't know these characters.
No, and it's not supposed to be. And I mean, it is just like, while it's the third one in this, I would say it's probably, well, I don't know. I was gonna say it's more like Empire, because it's just as dark with everybody kind of. But I mean, 2 was, what do you call it there? Winter Soldier was kind of like that too. Captain America, for such a sunny character, he's got a lot of, well, and they do. Ooh, let's forget about that.
Let me tell you guys, because the second time that I saw Civil War, I'm sitting behind 2 young kids. They're about 7 years old, and they are twin African American boys. Mm-hmm. And when Black Panther comes on screen, something magical happens to those 2 kids. I mean, don't get me wrong. They love all of the characters. They are completely involved. They were terrific for 2, 7-year-old kids who probably get bored if there's too much talking in a movie,
Yeah.
Black Panther comes on screen and everything changes for those 2 boys. They completely flip out. And this is a movie where, keep in mind, they have both War Machine and Falcon in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to kind of speculate on that as, have we really seen like a major, big budget studio film with 3 African-American leads that's not packaged as black cinema, basically?
Fast and the Furious, probably.
Yeah, that's about your closest.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I've forgotten that. I'm not a big follower of that franchise.
Oh, you should be.
One who hit me into it, man. Those movies are fun once you get past the first couple ones.
Yeah.
Hey, I like Tokyo Drift quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, you get to 4 and you're like, 4 is ridiculous, and after that you're just like, oh, they figured out the formula.
It's just a big action movie.
Just a big old action movie with crazy stuff and scenes and plots that make no sense, but you just go along for the ride because it's fun. But here's the best part about Civil War, man, is that it does all of those things and is intelligent and works at what it wants to be. You have more questions, yes? Let's keep.
I do. I got 3 more questions.
Okay, bring them on.
So here's my next question for you. If you are a DC movie apologist, and I think that Bruce is almost there, like where Bruce is almost a DC movie apologist, what is your feeling when you watch this movie? Because it's basically the same themes as Batman versus Superman.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you exactly what I thought, because I've thought on it quite a bit, is that if the movie is a little bit of fun and, you have a little bit more focus on it, you understand what your objectives are, and you stick with it, people will forgive a lot, because there's just as many problems with the way Zemo approaches stuff, in my opinion, as there are with Luthor. But for one, Zemo's not as identifiable of a character, so people aren't going to mind that he's quite different than he is in the comics, and he's not wearing a tablecloth on his head. And they also have so much fun with it, and they actually just go ahead full on introduce new characters instead of just having a YouTube clip of each one. And they cut down. They do still have a couple moments here where it drug, I felt like, but they cut down so that there's enough fun in the beginning, middle, and end that you're going to want to go see it again. And that's something that I don't think Batman v Superman did, because that should have been $1 billion movie, even if it was an average movie. They just somehow made it so you didn't really want to watch it more than once. And it goes to show that all the things that people complain about with that Batman v Superman aren't really as much of the problem. It's just the fact that they didn't have enough fun with it.
Well, I mean, I'll bring this up because I wrote this the other day after seeing it, and it kind of struck me as to that. And you guys know me; I don't write stuff down, so I thought this was worthy enough to do such a thing. But I mean, I wrote down, like, Zack Snyder treats comic book movies like someone who doesn't read comics.
Yes,
absolutely.
This is what somebody who doesn't read comic books thinks about the thing that people who do read comics love, when in fact that's one of the least things that we love about comics and everything. And I bet you can't think of 10 utterly amazing scenes that you've read in comics over the years that were fight scenes. Basically, so it's one of those things that's, because at the end of the day, it's not why you choose to read a book, it's the story. The story is where you want it at. The action is cool, but the story, that's where it's at. Growing up, I like both sides of comic books, the art and the writing and everything. And you need both of those things. When they're both in concert together, that's when you have the best book. Now, you can forgive some, art when the writing is great, and you can give some art, you can forgive some writing when the art is great. But you still need as much of both of those as you possibly can. And what Civil War does is do both of those things.
And you got to give some really nice action shots that aren't too dependent on superpowers and laser blasts and fire shots, because in this movie we had that great sequence in Lagos in the beginning. Then in the middle we had the Bucharest scene with Bucky and Cap against all those guys storming Bucky's apartment, and then we had all kinds of good stuff at the end. But with Batman v Superman, you really didn't get any of the good stuff till the end, like that whole scene. And maybe they have to reframe it, but that whole scene where Batman goes and rescues Martha Kent, wow, I hope I'm not spoiling that movie for anybody because they weren't expecting that. But anyway, that sort of scene belonged in the middle and not tacked on to all the other action at the end. Do you follow me there? Mm-hmm. And then we didn't need some of the slow stuff. It's like they tried to explain Lex Luthor's plot, how elaborate it was, to the point that it made it just not work very well. Zemo's plot is equally far-fetched and elaborate, but they just touch on it and you go with it, It's
one of those things where it's like the less you talk about it, the more you're just kind of willing to go along with it instead of overanalyzing it.
I'm a guy that loves visuals, and I appreciate what Zack Snyder does with visuals, but sometimes I feel like he's focused on making an epic movie, whether it's good or not, rather than just making a really good movie.
Well, the other part to this, too, is that there is subtext to Civil War that is completely missing from Batman v Superman. Because
there's a little bit of it, but I mean, that could have been easily kind of worked into it. They could have put an angle on it to accomplish the same thing. And also, if Batman v Superman were 12, 13 movies into the universe, I think it would have went over better, too.
Yeah, that's true. If they had a friendship before this movie was ever made.
That's the ultimately, I think, one of the biggest shortcomings of that is and I've always said it, is DC's wanting to run before they've learned to walk. And this year hit the 8-year mark that we've been doing things in the quote Marvel Cinematic Universe. 8 years ago, Nick Fury popped out at the end of some credits and said, "I want to talk to you about the Avengers initiative." There was no way they could have known that would have led to where this is right now and to the success that it is right now. It's like, if it failed, it was a nice little kind of button there that really didn't mean nothing, but it's kind of neat to think about what could have happened.
And I'll also say that a movie can get a little bit of a pass on some of the not as good parts if they just package it nicely, put a lot of fun in there. You can overlook the flaws if you're enjoying the flaws while they're going on, which is something that Batman v Superman didn't have that this one did have. You know, you get some of the little things where you'll let it go. And then also, even though it's not fair, like every movie should be judged on its own, it's still part of a larger body of work. And you know, we got to know all these characters before, so they don't have to focus on telling us as much about them in this movie. And it's also the sort of thing that I think you guys will agree with me. But if there's a guy that you know is a really, really funny guy, and you see him get up at an open mic or something and try out some new material, even if it's not that great, you give him a pass because you know he has good stuff and this is just something he's working on. So
Yeah, did you hear that, Adam?
Listen, no, you know who that was for me was always Joe Zimmerman. He was like, even when he was bombing, you just still loved what he was doing. Way back in the day.
For me, it was the guy with the Hitler puppet. But anyway,
that guy was
he was awful.
Man. That guy was something.
But that's
a
not
real
the point
thing,
of this
people.
show. But I'm just saying that sometimes things do get a little bit of a free pass. There are people that have their mind made up before they see either this movie or Batman v Superman. Yes. I am a DC apologist. I do think this is the better movie. I think a big part of it is that there's been more guidance, and this has been incubated better than Batman v Superman was. And also, I never thought that I would see this movie. I really didn't think I would see this movie, especially back when I saw the first Iron Man and the first Hulk and some of those early Phase 1 kind of things that Marvel's Cinematic Universe did when it was just Marvel Studios, I guess. So there was a whole lot of anticipation in this. Also, this would have been easy to screw up, and they didn't screw it up. So there was a whole lot that goes into it differently than if I were just a naive viewer seeing something like this for the first time, trying to figure it out.
I read an article today, earlier today, on Civil War specifically, and it's the dueling philosophies of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, and it took it from the philosophical standpoint. It didn't even have to do with the plot points of the movie itself. It's their own ideologies, and it splits them in two. And basically, what they're saying is that Captain America is more, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. He's a deontologist, like
God bless you.
Camp where it's an individual needs to do the best that the individual can do, whereas Tony Stark's philosophy is utilitarianism, where the plight of the few is worth it if it's better for mankind. And so just the fact that this article was written tells me that Civil War has a lot more going on than Batman v Superman.
Yeah, all those articles were like, their mothers have the same name.
And something else that it comes down to for me, something that I just can't take out of any of the recent Marvel movies, is there's nobody in Hollywood that appeals to me in the same way that Robert Downey Jr. does. So there's a whole lot to be said for him when it comes to the way I look at these movies. You replace him with a different actor, I may feel entirely different about this whole universe that Marvel's built.
And not only that, man, but the way that Captain America plays off of Iron Man, because there's such joy and such just a respect that Chris Evans has as Captain America that you really don't see this side of Christopher Reeves, basically.
Yeah.
He's one of the superheroes of the modern age where you're like, wow, you know what? Like that guy is someone you can look up to. Whereas Tony Stark is more, like we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, would you leave Chris Evans alone with your kids? You would. You totally would. Would you leave with Robert Downey Jr.? Probably not.
But once we get into the particulars here, I'm going to talk about maybe how I identify a little too closely with some of the stuff that that arc that he's taken, Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Tony Stark, has taken over the past 8 years. But it's definitely the biggest draw to me. I mean, I think Chris Evans is great. I think everybody they've cast is great. But I don't see much, not just in superheroes, movies, but in all of movies that kind of has related to me and had this big picture. What's he been in now? Like 7 movies, and he's had this continuing arc that's just amazing. And a lot of actors just can't pull it off the way he does. I'm really drawn to his performance and his character in these movies. Much better than most of the Tony Starks in the comics, who I still like a lot, but this movie version is something special.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
And we're getting more. I mean, at least one more out of them. And it's just always one of those. Hey, man, these things are printing money, so give them what they want and keep them on rolling. You know what I mean?
And it's weird though, because particularly with this movie and the things that we dealt with in Iron Man 3 and even in Age of Ultron, it's getting to the point that like if Tony Stark didn't appear in a movie, I'm convinced that this character needs a break. I'm not talking about the actor, but like I feel like Tony Stark literally would start to disappear from the scene about now, or if nothing else, just be as a sort of a recluse who gives a little advice here and there, and it's going to take a lot to draw him out of his seclusion.
Totally agree. So my fourth question.
Mm-hmm.
So Spider-Man, the actor who's playing Spider-Man has an honest to goodness, authentic Queens accent. So do we know if Tom Holland is actually from Queens, New York?
I think he's from planet Mars or something. That kid's good.
Oh, I thought he was Dutch with a name like Holland. I didn't know.
Listen to you. So we don't know. Basically, we don't know where he's from originally.
Not off the top of my head. I'm trying to look here in the IMDb's, but
actually, I'm doing the the research on the kid, and of course, the kid is British.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I remember that. There's a shocker.
Man,
it says something about the casting, though, when they had to make a point to tell people that only Americans could play Captain America.
It's pretty good.
Look, outside of him and everybody else, Anthony Mackie, who knows where he's from? These guys.
South Carolina, man.
Oh, that's right. He is from
here,
South.
buddy.
Yeah, I know he is. But but it is. But like a lot of our heroes are, not American. But that's. Hey, man, I'm like, who's the best actor for the job? And guess what? That kid knocked it out, man.
Yes, he did. And Chad Boseman, I loved that James Brown movie that he made.
I heard it was good. That's one.
Oh, man, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. He convinced me he was James Brown, even though he looks nothing like James Brown. He's just that good. And then
in the Jackie Robinson movie.
I didn't like the Jackie Robinson movie as much, but it wasn't because of Boseman's performance. It just it's a story I've seen time and time again. It's not fresh material. And maybe I'm not as interested in sports as I am in The Godfather of Soul these days, but I was so excited to see him play this role, and I think he did it perfectly. Different from Chala in the comics, but different in a good way. I mean, I'm liking this guy. He is an impressive actor, man.
I liked it. I liked that they kept him with kind of that, African accent a little bit there. So you knew it was just like, oh, this is not just some dude from the States kind of thing. Right. It's like, this is a guy from another area of the world. And when you hear, if you don't know nothing, you're like, Wakanda, I don't even know what that is. Where is that? And so it brings a little mystery and intrigue to this character.
He seems a little more hot-headed than Chala in the comics. I couldn't see this version of the character being part of the Illuminati, for example, but I really like this character, and I like the way that at the end of the day, despite his hot-headedness and his quest for vengeance, he's still the most level-headed person on the planet at this point.
Yeah, the characterization of Black Panther was great to me the first time I saw it. And I really liked the character. Actually, I just love this movie. But, there was something really special about seeing it today with those kids in front of me. There's something, it was almost like magic seeing their reaction to Black Panther in that movie. I really can't state it enough. Watching their reaction to seeing Black Panther on screen, it was really, really cool, man.
You should have been there with me. There were moments where Adam was just kind of like perking up in his chair going, "Well, holy crap, what's going on here?"
And I love the way that they did his costume. I mean, it totally works in this universe, this cinematic universe, while being pretty largely faithful to the comic book costume, the way the guy moves. I mean, I know a lot of that movement was CGI, but it was done expertly. Also, the way Boseman moves. I mean, he was really able to pull off those James Brown dance moves. So I know he's a graceful person, and he really shows the grace of a large cat sometimes when he's doing all this. And And I think they nailed that casting, and I wish I could take credit for it, but it was first suggested to me that he'd be good for that role by a guy that was a guest about 2 years ago on Heroes and Villains when we were doing an episode about Black Panther, and he said he thought the perfect person to play him would be Chadwick Boseman, and then like 8 months later it was announced, and I didn't really know that actor that well at the time the guy suggested it, but now he was a smart guy. So Arthur, you did a good job there.
That's a good episode, kids. Go back and listen to that one. Very informative.
Yep.
If you need to learn some backstory about Black Panther, that's a great episode to listen to for sure. Because I'm very spotty on Black Panther myself, so when I listened down to it, I was just like, oh, this is sweet. And, yeah, it's a good one.
And also, you should just listen to Heroes and Villains.
Yeah, just listen to it on a regular basis for crying out loud. But go back and listen to that one specifically, even. So do it.
And did you have another question there, Sean?
I do. I got one more.
All right.
So, has anyone mentioned yet where Nick Fury is during all this?
Didn't he go into hiding in the last flick?
Yeah, at the end of Winter Soldier, he was sort of going to go become Guy Incognito, but didn't he show up with his secret hovercraft at the end or his secret what you call it, the big aircraft carrier in the sky?
Helicarrier?
Yeah, helicarrier. I was wanting to call it.
I can't believe I got that, and you were scratching your head.
I'm grasping today for some reason. I couldn't even remember Julia Roberts' name.
Not bad. I feel good about myself. Wow, you just brought my ego up another.
Sort of at the end of Age of Ultron.
I don't think so. I don't know.
I thought that he was the one that showed up with the helicarrier at the end, but it might have been Maria Hill that showed up. Anyway, I'll have to go rewatch that. But I think the idea is, I mean, he's extremely wanted by the government, so it's going to take a lot to get him to show up, and I kind of suspect that as they're rolling these new characters in, that he's one of those folks they're kind of slowly letting go of, which kills me because he was so important to Phase 1.
He's got to be coming back. They'll let him come back. It's one of those things, man. I just think there's so many balls in the air that this is tough to do, man. And I'll say this. Everybody was just like, oh, we're bringing in Joss Whedon here for the Avengers movies. And, because he is so great at juggling large casts in the, the many works that he's done over the years. And I'm going to go right here and say it. The Russo brothers have out Whedon.
Well, there's two of them. It's not a fair comparison.
By the way, Sam Jackson is in Age of Ultron.
There you go.
Okay, I thought he was, because if he was not in Age of Ultron, that would mean his potentially last ever appearance in the MCU was on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that just won't do.
Nah, listen, Sam Jackson, I mean, he's literally said, like, as long as they'll pay me, I'll play this character, so,
Yeah, but it's that pay me part that I don't know what's going on.
Well,
they're bringing in new people. They know they're going to have to turn it over soon, and they're doing a good job of setting up for the turnover.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, too, though, he's also one of those guys. A, he still hasn't aged since Time to Kill. And B, he doesn't need that much money. He just asked to be paid. Not paid a lot, just paid. He's not like, I need that RDJ money. He's like, I just need some money.
And also, I think separating Feige's sphere of influence from Ike Perlmutter, is that how you say it? Perlmutter?
Sure.
Anyway, separating the movie side from Perlmutter, I think, opens up some budgetary freedom that they didn't have before, particularly with Robert Downey Jr., who name-dropped Ike as the reason he might not be coming back.
I'd have bust all up in that office, and I'd have been like, look, I'm over here printing money. You get rid of this. I just so would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that conversation.
I would have said, okay, so you just gave $1 million to Donald Trump, but you don't want to pay RDJ. That doesn't make sense.
How dare you, sir? How dare you? But no, it's honest to goodness, worth every penny. But this Avengers 2.5, I guess, if you will.
Well, I love it too with this movie. This cinematic universe is becoming like a comic book, because you could pick up a Captain America comic book with all these characters in it and you wouldn't give it a second thought. But here we're wanting to call it Avengers 2.5 or Iron Man 4. I mean, you could have titled this Iron Man 4. You could have titled this Avengers 3. It would have worked in any of those ways, and they just called it Captain America. And in the world of publishing comics, sometimes that's what happens. Which title can have the space for this story? And I like that the movies are starting to follow in that source material tradition that I've been such a fan of for so long.
But here's the thing, too. At the same time, this is a Captain America movie.
But you also could, I could make a very good argument that this movie is more about Tony Stark. He's the one who really has an arc in this movie.
I think you'd have to edit a little bit, but yeah.
Well, they both do. Both Cap and Iron Man have a pretty big arc, in fact, in this movie.
I feel like Cap is rigid and doesn't change much. Sort of the same things that people say about the Punisher, only in the opposite direction. I feel a little bit like that about Cap here. I think he had his biggest character moments in the previous movie, Winter Soldier. But I think, man, there's just this long story about Tony just breaking down slowly mentally from the pressure that he puts on himself that's being really told so well and carried on so well here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with it by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah.
And, probably most people, if challenged with giving this movie a title, would say it's an Avengers movie, Avengers Civil War or something like that.
Oh, yeah. But
or even just call it Civil War. Don't give it a tagline before or after.
Yeah, just throw a little Robert E. Lee in there. You never know. Little Grant, who cares?
Oh, man, Tecumseh Sherman's coming to town.
A little bit of that action.
Robert E. Lee, by the way.
I think it should be like it's. You remember like that 1608 book that they put out?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
just like that, but in Civil War times.
1864, Marvel 1864.
Boom. Get on it, Quesada.
I'm getting to work right now. I'm going to send him a pitch.
Dear Joe.
But yeah, man. So I don't even know how we can really get into, because the movie is.
Well, there's a few big beats. I think we covered a whole lot of ground there just with those questions.
Sure.
And the conversation that came out, but there are a few big beats I think we should talk about.
Okay.
The first beat is what goes down in Lagos. This takes the place of Stamford, Connecticut. I can understand a couple of reasons why they would want to vary this from the comics. First of all, Speedball's kind of a weird character. The New Warriors, maybe not the easiest fit into this universe they've built. So to let Wanda Maximoff, a relative newcomer to the team, fill that role works. And also, I think, they tied Wakanda and Black Panther in with that tragedy with the civilian deaths at the beginning. They toned down the deaths like a lot of movies feel the need to do after some of the public tragedies that we've had in the past 15 years.
It's a smart move, really.
And could you imagine if they killed a bunch of elementary school kids in Connecticut, how that would have went over?
Not so good.
Yeah, so I can understand the changes. It worked well. At the same time, I also could see both sides of it. That's what I like about this movie. It is one of those movies where literally half the people walk in on one team or the other, and they probably walk out on that same team. They don't get preachy about who's right and who's wrong, and they also don't have a hokey come together moment. They have a bit of a reconciliation, but they never have that come together moment like Batman.
Yeah, nobody's walking out holding hands at the end of this thing.
No, because it's all based on ideology. I mean, that's what makes this movie so terrific.
And so that's the first big beat. What happens in Lagos builds upon the Battle of Manhattan, builds upon the Sokovia affair, builds upon Hydra taking down S.H.I.E.L.D. in D.C., and they do show just how much destruction has been going on since the Avengers show up. And Vision, who's the one person who is not making an emotional decision, absolutely sees the correlation there. He even calls it causation, which, so often folks that do various types of statistical research love to say correlation does not equal causation, but Vision takes it a step further. And I think that was important to have Vision take the pro-registration side, because in the comics it was just so cut and dried that you were on the anti-registration side. But here they really make a much better argument to make it not an easy decision.
Yeah, and the part with that opening with Crossbones, it had me a little nervous at first because they went crazy shaky cam during that.
And they did the whole skipped frames thing that had a real Matthew Vaughn feel to it, which I love to a degree, but I also don't want it to be like the thing that suddenly everybody wants to do. It's good because it's not done a whole lot.
And they actually kind of pull back from that even towards the end of that whole fight scene, which I thought was great. But
they sort of save it for the fights involving the less powerful people, the more fist fight stuff. They don't use it for the big epic flying in the sky, shooting fireballs at each other battles.
And they also do the really cool thing where they split the action, where Captain America is going to fight Crossbones, but Crossbones doesn't have the biotoxin. His guys do. And so you have Scarlet Witch and Falcon fighting that guy, the guy with the actual toxin.
Right.
I thought that was a really smart move instead of having Captain America beat the big bad guy and also get the biotoxin.
Yeah, who like, you know, the one guy he's like, I am the final boss, you beat me and get the special ingredient as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't need all that. But
Were you guys surprised that Crossbones died in this? I kind of thought maybe he's a character they keep around a little bit. I kind of thought he was going to be a bigger villain in this story initially.
Yeah, me too. But, you know, when you look back on it, though, Bruce, whenever it comes to these villains in Marvel, they have no problem just killing all of the villains all the time. You know?
Yeah, you're right, because particularly we know they're building towards Thanos, so Crossbones is going to have a tough time fitting in as a meaningful villain once somebody like Thanos comes into the picture.
Yeah.
Now, another big beat, you know, after the initial thing that causes the whole idea of the Sokovia Accords to happen, and you know, when they're signing the Accords, a bomb goes off that kills T'Challa's father from Wakanda. Seemingly, Bucky has done it. But the next big thing is when Zemo really starts to play in, where Zemo shows up in place of the psychiatrist that's supposed to evaluate Bucky, and then he gets activated with that weird string of words that they've put together. What do you guys, and even I loved it because I was with my wife and I was like, okay, so they're going all Manchurian Candidate here. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, Manchurian Candidate. It's kind of common parlance. And she said, no, it's not. And then later when Tony Stark called him Manchurian Candidate, I got to give her a little.
Did you throw your popcorn right in her face and just go like, I told you?
I said, kabingo. I don't know. I tried to come up with a catchphrase. It didn't work.
Then she just laughs him out of the theater, just goes, your victory wasn't so great now, was it?
I like that, though. I like that they have, you know, the movie, you know, I mean, it's such a movie trope, but I love that movie trope where we're going to say these words and you're going to be my zombie. Like, I think that's a really cool, nifty thing.
And I love how long they held back on the reveal to everyone about what Zemo was up to. I really do love that they kind of held back that the actual psychiatrist had been killed. Even, you know, I saw the movie twice, and the first time I saw it, when I saw a dead body in the tub, I still didn't put two and two together. I just thought it meant that Zemo was so bad he killed whoever the room belonged to, and then slowly started to put it together. But did either of you guys read who the body in the bathtub was?
I don't know, but he sure wanted that ham sandwich bad enough to kill that cat. That's rough.
Did you read who that was by any chance, Sean?
I didn't. Who is it?
It's one of the Russo brothers. I think it's Joe.
Oh.
Yeah, so he got to play a cadaver in his own movie, so that was nice.
Cool.
So let me ask you guys this question: Did you know that did you know the big flip at the end? Did you know what was going to happen before it happened?
Yeah, kinda.
You did.
Yeah, I mean, they can't show. I mean, they honestly showed us that scene of Bucky going and getting the super soldier serum about 8 times before they had the full reveal on it. It's not something they're going to show just for the heck of it. They opened the movie with it, for heaven's sake. I kind of figured, you know, it looked like a like a Howard Stark car and all that sort of thing. So I kind of knew where that part was going.
Yeah, more or less.
But I guess the next big beat in the movie is probably when we go to Queens, when Tony Stark goes to recruit Peter, and this just perked up everybody in the movie theater both times when I saw it.
I've never smiled so hard at a title card.
When it says Queens, half of the audience, the first night I saw it, started laughing because they knew exactly where it was headed.
It's like, oh snap, here we go.
And you know, as soon as Tom Holland walks into the frame and he says something, you know, I just kind of, oh, that's Peter, that's Spider-Man, you know, telling my boys who were so excited. That's the reason that so many younger folks wanted to go see this was Spider-Man. And then Tony Stark and the makers of this movie beat us to the punch and called out the fact that Aunt May was hot in this movie. So now I don't have to feel as weird by making eyes at Martha Kent and Aunt May as maybe I would have.
Oh, good old Aunt May, just Benjamin Button her way through the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
We
man,
all shapes and sizes, she says.
Yeah.
Yes, and she's also an expert in the traction on 70s cars, if I remember it correctly from My Cousin Vinny.
This
That's
much is
right.
true. You got to watch out for them Buick Skylarks, boy.
And she has a thing for people that look like George Costanza. So I have a long, rich tradition of admiring Marissa Tomei.
Don't we all? But no, man, she was great. I mean, I love this introduction with the two of them, and just RDJ's face, just animated the entire time, is just glorious.
And then I even loved it, like when he says, that grant you applied for, and he doesn't just give him a wink. He gives him like a quadruple wink, one from each eye twice. So he'll go along with it. I loved it.
And just like the kind of like faces when it's just like, what I'm talking about, right? Kind of looks.
And there was a lot of speculation when that initial footage showed Spider-Man and how he was going to appear in this movie, and the way that his eyes kind of moved like a cartoon. And there were some folks that weren't sure if they were going to like that or not. But they give it the perfect explanation when he meets with Tony Stark. He explains how he wears like these tanning bed goggles to help him focus. And we know that he's now got sort of a Tony Stark designed suit that he's wearing, and there was a part of me hoping we might even get a glimpse at Iron Spider, but
no,
we didn't.
I thank the dear Lord above that no Iron Spider was involved in this.
Well, RDJ is in Spider-Man Homecoming, so I still have my hope for
no,
Iron Spider.
No, just no.
And then I guess even the bigger question I started to have, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Thunderbolt Ross is going to kind of fill that role, but I started thinking this agreement with this agreement with Sony not only allows them to work Spider-Man into these movies, but once they start to get some of these epic Secret Avengers post-Civil War storylines, Norman Osborn could be a really key character to have into this storyline.
I could see that.
Yeah, so I'm real excited about that collaboration. I hope it lasts for a while.
He's a good big bad. And Marvel desperately needs to have more of those. They don't have enough.
And he's so important in like that government political kind of intrigue stuff. And they certainly could have Thunderbolt Ross filling both the Thunderbolt Ross role as well as the Norman Osborn role. But I would love to see like Hammer, S.H.I.E.L.D. change to Hammer with Osborn in charge, while meanwhile at the Raft we're getting the Thunderbolts put together. Because if Suicide Squad is as successful as folks think it might be, and importantly more successful than Batman v Superman, they're going to have to be awfully tempted to bring the Thunderbolts to us on the screen, because they are, in a way, Marvel's Suicide Squad.
That is a good point, man. They are definitely going to start seriously considering doing the Thunderbolts if that movie is a big deal, and I didn't even think about that. Good job.
And that's a place where Crossbones could have come in handy.
And let's be honest, though, Bruce, you really just want a Red Hulk.
Oh, man, I so want a Red Hulk. I want a Red Hulk. I want him to find a way to give us at least a glimpse at a Gray Hulk.
Yeah.
And I want She-Hulk in these movies.
They said they were going to do it. Like, they had toyed around with the idea in the second Avengers that he was going to be gray, but then they just decided against it. I don't know why. I read an article, but I sure don't remember it.
But
do you want Mr. Fix-It, or do you want just Gray Hulk?
And I think the next big beat to really mention is the reason that most people came into this movie, and that is that large epic battle at the Leipzig Airport or whatever, Leipzig Airport, where we get Ant-Man and Spider-Man and Chala and some of these new guys brought in, and we've now got Hawkeye coming out of retirement and rescuing Wanda from Vision, and this really is the scene, and it lasts a nice long time, but that really is the embodiment of Civil War in this movie, is that one big battle at the airport.
Yeah, how'd you guys see the movie?
3D, then I saw it standard.
Okay.
I saw it 3D both times, but the second time it was accidental. I thought I was getting a 2D ticket, then she handed me my glasses.
I was wondering why that bill was $80. I went to see it in the it's FOMAX, but the IMAX nevertheless in 3D and everything, and so you had the full frame during all of the fight there at the airport and everything. It was good.
Man, I love that airport fight, and the whole thing with Ant-Man. Paul Rudd was just so much fun. He's going to be a lot of fun in these future Avengers movies where he can just be a small part. And
small part, you idiot.
But what I'm saying though is he is really really a fun character. He's a joy. I love the way that other folks don't take him seriously. Unfortunately, I kind of had it spoiled that he was going to become Giant Man. You know, he was going to do the Pym particle thing where he could go big instead of small.
You know what ruined it? You know what ruined it for me? The back of the flipping Funko things that I bought. I got one that's of Iron Man, Captain America, and Black Panther. And unbeknownst to me, I just kind of look on the back, just going, "How many characters they got in this thing?" And I see Giant Man. I'm like, "Dang it!"
Thanks, man.
Now I had that.
My dad and brother didn't know, but they were like, it blew their socks off, man.
I had the reveal in the worst way possible. I had it revealed when I was reading a review of an episode of Legends of Tomorrow, which is where you really don't expect to have Civil War spoiled.
Come on.
Yeah, Ray Palmer, the Atom, he went giant, which is something that Ray Palmer's never done in the comics. But there was an episode where he had to fight this giant robot, so he went giant. And then the review said they're certain that Legends of Tomorrow just did that to try to beat Ant-Man to the punch because he will be Giant Man in Civil War. And I was like, okay, thanks for nothing, review of Legends of Tomorrow.
Yeah, and so many people have seen Legends of Tomorrow more than they saw this movie. Oh wait, no.
Yeah, what yet another reason why that show sucks.
Why DC is right on top of it as always.
But I like it that they introduced Giant Man because Paul Rudd, Scott Lang really found lots of ways to contribute as Ant-Man. But then when he went Giant Man, it set it up not only for an unexpected major adversary to be faced, but it also led to some humor, and we got our Empire Strikes Back references.
Oh, so good.
And we do have another Empire Strikes Back reference later in the movie. But
here's the thing. I'll talk about this real quick, though. Number one, not only do we get Giant Man, I mean, we still get Ant-Man, and he does a lot of stuff that's amazingly awesome as Ant-Man. Jumping in Stark's suit and everything and messing with everything there, completely awesome. And then all this stuff, but it is so funny that he goes through and does all this. But the biggest thing to me that, like, I don't think enough people are probably pointing out is that this thing is done in broad friggin' daylight, man.
Yep.
Yeah. And it looks great.
Like so many of these movies just hide everything in darkness because a lot of it kind of looks like crap. And something that could look as awful as Giant Man going around in an airport, smashing into, a big giant airplane and everything can look awful. Everything looked great. It looked exactly like you wanted it to. And I don't know how they did it, but it worked beyond expectations.
Well, one of the things that my buddy Chris brought up on Twitter the other day was he couldn't figure out why they changed Ant-Man's costume. He's like, why did they change the helmet?
Yeah.
But it makes total sense when you think about the fact that, well, they're making him look more like Ultraman, because that is absolutely what they should be doing with that character.
Oh, man, I want him to go back to the feathery antenna on it that like Giant Man had when Hank Pym was Giant Man. But anyway, I also thought in this battle, which is really where the only part of the movie where we get Spider-Man is this battle, but I thought they hit every key character trait of Spider-Man just perfectly. They had the banter down, they had the movement down. The idea he's only been doing this for 6 months is the only thing that really makes him vulnerable at all, because you have to admit, when it comes to the other folks here, with the exception of maybe Vision and Wanda, nobody's even close to a match for Spider-Man if he's got a couple years experience under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, I like how he is just kind of a noob, doesn't really know what's kind of going on, but
he's just happy to be there. Like, even though it's a battle where you could potentially be killed, somebody's going to get paralyzed at the end of this battle, he is just laughing. He's talking to his the people he's against as if he were playing like pickup playground basketball, trash talking and having fun. I loved everything about it.
Of him is really great too, because one of the things that they completely nailed that they get in the comic book right that I've never seen in the movie is that he is annoying, and he's not annoying because he is cracking wise all the time. He's annoying because he's constantly talking always.
Yeah, it's a lot like maybe I was when I was 16. I never shut up, so I love that character. And I'm also of the opinion that once you take out like cosmic level entities, and at times Scarlet Witch has been so overpowered she simply says no more mutants and they all go away. But when you take out some of those extreme examples of the real sort of nitty-gritty superheroes in the Marvel universe, I've always been of the opinion, like him or hate him, Spider-Man really would defeat anybody unless they had some like magic Infinity Gauntlet or something.
I always tell people, man, Spider-Man has literally punched Hulk to the moon.
Yes. And he's
has
got those
happened.
webs. He matches up great against like big, large, oversized villains because he just does what he does to Ant-Man here. He just takes him down. Or, famously, anytime he fights Juggernaut, he's even said to him, okay, so I'll fight with you for a little bit, but eventually you're going to end up in the cement or marshmallow goo or the tar or something like that, right? He's so agile. He is the most powerful character, save the cosmic entities.
And the best part about all this is nobody's talking about it, and they won't do it because nobody has the cojones to do it. But we saw it at the beginning of this flick. Tom Holland can be in high school forever, people. We have the technology.
Not only can he be in high school forever, but they can keep making these movies forever, perhaps, if they keep working with Feige.
All we got to, I'm just saying. But I mean, I like how he's got to be 16 or something in this thing. But I think we can I want at the very least, 2 high school Spider-Man movies out of this thing, man.
And something encouraging, I look
put them in college.
Yeah. As something encouraging too, I looked Tom Holland up. He's 37 years old, so he's gonna have that baby face forever.
Yeah, but what ends up happening is that you start looking a little bit like, and his maladies aside, you start looking like Michael J. Fox when you're young looking forever, and then all of a sudden you're old.
Yeah, he's gonna have that little still disease where he starts to gain weight but not get taller.
That's right.
Spider pigs rolling in there, just kind of, what's up, guys?
But then the fallout from this initial massive battle, we get Rhodey in critical condition at Columbia Hospital, perhaps paralyzed for life. We get several of Team Cap caught in the raft, and we get introduced to the raft when Tony Stark goes there. But along the way, Sharon Carter has proven that she's sort of a double agent, more on Cap's side than she is on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s. We even get something that I kind of liked because looking at the lineup, it was fairly evenly matched, but I wouldn't buy Cap and Bucky coming out on top if not for the betrayal of Black Widow against T'Challa. So I thought that was a nice move, and it kind of fits a little bit with the character that she's used to following orders even if they don't go along with her emotional desires, but she still has that affection, I guess you could say, for Bucky and Cap, a very innocent affection too. I'm not trying to say there's a romantic link there, but I liked it. It made it a little more believable that they would get away, and that's absolutely something I would believe Black Widow would do.
Well, I mean, and Iron Man says it himself, where he's just you're so used to playing the double agent kind of thing, and to a degree, he is right. Is that's kind of just probably just in her psyche of stuff. I was like, well, I got to kind of play both sides as much as I can here.
Well, and what she says back to him is also right, where she says, can you take your ego out of this for 1 second?
Yeah.
I mean, that's right, too.
And, in the fallout, we get introduced to the raft. I'm glad to see, is it William Hurt returning as Thunderbolt?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Ross. So
yes.
I kind of like a little bit of continuity there. I don't really feel the need for a third Thunderbolt Ross in this series. What did you guys think? I got to talk a little bit about Everett Ross, and that can be a little confusing. I wish he had a different name. We've got Thaddeus Ross and Everett Ross, but Martin Freeman's character, what did you guys think about him?
I wish you had a little more. I mean, of the
I love Martin
characters,
Freeman. But
I do too.
I don't know that he needed the American accent. The character for me would have worked with his British accent. He's Arthur Dent from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He's Dr. Watson from Sherlock. He was one of the hobbits in The Hobbit.
He's Bilbo, for crying out loud.
Bilbo, yeah. But I love the guy. I am a huge fan. I've actually seen him nude in Love Actually, and I still am a big fan. So
I thought you were just going to be like...
What a weird thing to bring up.
I thought it was just going to be like, I've seen him nude, bathhouse, don't ask.
But Everett Ross in the comics is a supporting character from Black Panther comics. And he sort of was... Yeah, he was like a government liaison between the U.S. government and the Wakandan government. So he was always in Wakanda, always kind of tagging along, kind of a comic relief sidekick, more or less, for Black Panther.
T'Challa needs a clown. Let's get this guy.
He was introduced in 1998, and the writer's name is escaping me right now. But the writer admitted that he based Everett Ross on Chandler Bing from Friends. Like I said, it's 1998, and I wonder if even just for a second, if they ever entertain the idea of maybe casting Matthew Perry as Everett Ross.
Could it be more hot in Wakanda?
He said that kind of stuff in the comics. I mean, he was Chandler.
Great. Sean, you had something?
I was wondering what where the character came from, but Bruce brought it up perfectly.
So
and
That's what we have here, man.
his accent isn't nearly as awful as at least what we're hearing in the trailer of Benedict Cumberbatch's.
Now, I don't think that Martin Freeman's accent is bad at all. I just really enjoy Martin Freeman's natural voice, though, and I miss that.
Oh, I see.
Yes, it's kind of like if Dolly Parton is in a movie and they tell her to speak like she's from Brooklyn. Even if she does a good Brooklyn accent, I'm going to miss that Tennessee sweetheart. Because I'm the first person to ever compare Martin Freeman to Dolly Parton.
I think that is the first.
That I promise you.
Yeah, no doubt there.
But I love Dolly Parton. I've made that clear here before. She's a sweetheart.
I've made it abundantly clear on several occasions. I love Dolly Parton.
And you can't tell me in 1979 she wouldn't have been a perfect dazzler.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm completely indifferent towards Elizabeth Olsen. She's a lovely girl, but you keep putting her in mini skirts and those long leggings. Dumb.
I am like I'm all for her. I think people are complaining about the accent. I didn't have any problem with it. But no, she's really good. I like how she's part of the team. I love the scene in the beginning where it really showed them as a team, where it's like, hey, like we practice here, and her lifting Cap up to the window and everything, where he can like bust through and then break some skulls.
Now, what did you guys think about the way they're sort of gently approaching the potential romance between Vision and Scarlet Witch? Because, of course, they were married in the comics and even had some kind of synthetically generated children at one point.
I mean, I think it's something that's got to happen.
I think it's a crime against God.
That's true. I mean, I agree.
Religious convictions aside,
I agree with that statement, but I still hold by my first one as well.
And I like the way they've dealt with it. They didn't just like rush into it and embrace each other. We're seeing gentle little moments where the relationship's budding. Then we see some big things that are going to cause roadblocks in the way. So they can really string this out for a while. I like it.
Yeah, when you shoot a man down 16 stories underground, they probably hold it against you a little bit.
And I want to comment on that scene, too, just how good superhero movies are now compared to where it would have been 15 years ago, because she does it and they escape. 15 years ago, she would have done it, then looked at Hawkeye and said, I increased his density so he fell completely through all the floors. That's how I did that. Yeah. And then they would have left.
Really good point, man.
They don't have to do that anymore.
They would have done that. You're right.
She's got those magical powers, and we're moving the heck on.
And then I guess in the interest of time, we really ought to kind of move forward to that big final showdown in Russia with the 4 Russian Winter Soldiers that they're expecting Zemo to try to unleash on the world. Bucky and Cap are there. Tony Stark has done the hard thing and admitted he's wrong and talked to Anthony Mackie and gotten the information from Falcon on where to go. And, of course, he's followed by a Wakandan stealth jet driven by or flown by Black Panther there. So we kind of have the big final showdown where Zemo's full plan comes to fruition, where they're all shocked that he doesn't want to unleash those Winter Soldiers. In fact, he despises them.
Which was great.
Yeah, it was just a MacGuffin to draw Bucky, Cap, and Iron Man there because he really wants to do away with the Avengers. He says the only way to do away with them is to have them to destroy themselves because no outside force ever could. And he finally shows the full, surprisingly high-def roadside camera footage from 1991. It starts off grainy black and white, then it switches to color in 3D. So I have to imagine there's a little artistic license being used there.
But when we get to the point then we kind of, as a moviegoer, travel to that time.
Into his own memories.
Yeah.
And I do like it that they show a couple things I like. They show the death of Howard Stark, and then they show the death of Mrs. Stark. I think her name's Mary or something. And then later on, when Cap is trying to calm down Iron Man, he says, I don't care. He killed my mom. And he says so much when he says that because he's also saying he understands Howard had his hands in a lot of stuff. Howard wasn't always on the right side of things. Maybe Howard had it coming to him, but his mother was a saint. Yeah. And I think a lot of us might be able to feel that way about our mother and father. If something bad happens to our father, it's going to hurt us and we're going to be sad and we're going to miss him. But you do something to our mother and it's just a whole nother level. And I think anybody, a lot of people can say they're Team Cap, but I think most people would be hard pressed to react any differently than Iron Man did in that situation. When you see someone who killed your mom, I don't care if they say, yeah, I was really being controlled by drugs and alcohol back then. I'm sober now. I'm a different person. You really wouldn't care, would you?
It's tough. It's no easy task for sure.
And I love it too that they show probably that, and I like this in this universe, but they show that probably neither Captain America or Bucky alone could handle Iron Man, but it takes the both of them. He kind of knows he probably won't win, but he doesn't really care. He's just got to make his point, sort of. And I love it when he blasts Bucky's arm off, man.
Yeah, that was cool. But I mean, I'll say the same thing. Black Panther needs more than one person to go and kick his butt too.
Yes, he does, man. Black Panther's amazing.
Go back to those fights and stuff because he was pretty much holding his own against people like Cap and Winter Soldier.
The comic book story is kind of odd. He gets the power of the Black Panther from the god Bast or goddess Bast, and he has to eat some kind of weird root in order to get the power, and you have to be deemed worthy and all that kind of stuff. But it is something that I would say is true, man. Wakanda is an amazing place, and Black Panther is its defender. And he's a member of the Illuminati in the comics at this point. I mean, he is so high up there, not only in intellect and in wealth, but in his abilities. He took down the whole Fantastic Four at once just to show off.
It's like, what?
Yeah, so that's
hey, big deal. Max Landis did that too with the
and I was totally expecting I was totally expecting Black Panther to barge in and tell everybody, stop, we must work together. And I'm so glad they didn't have that moment. They just let it play out. Black Panther took care of what he needed to take care of. And then, he has his nice mid-credit sequence that I really want to talk about just because I love Wakanda and Black Panther.
I mean, great. I mean, like the whole movie has great action scenes in it. And all the big set pieces are done really, really well. From what I understand, they had some of the guys from the Raid do some of the second unit action work.
I actually maybe saw some like behind the scenes stuff where it had those guys there working with them.
They're in those behind the scene moments.
So when you got a pedigree like that, you're gonna have some pretty good action scenes in there, and it really works. It gives you those big splash page moments, several of them actually, and it works better than it has any bloody right to.
and I love the presence, just the presence that T'Challa has in this film. I mean, while Iron Man and Cap and Bucky are fighting things out, he doesn't really care because it's not going to have that much impact on him how much it turns out. It's just like if I were to see two squirrels fighting over an acorn in my front yard, I'd probably just go ahead and go about whatever I needed to do that day. Unless they were in my way, I wouldn't pay it much attention.
I'd start a betting pool. That's just me, though.
Well, that's kind of how T'Challa is here.
That moment where they say where Hawkeye goes, "Hey, we've never met. I'm Clint," and he goes, "I don't care."
Yeah,
yeah, I love it, and I also like that T'Challa, he'll sign the Sokovia Accords, but he doesn't care because he knows no one can enforce it on him if he doesn't want to agree with it. He'll sign the Accords, and yet later we'll see give refuge to Captain America just because that is T'Challa. He is as independent as a person can be.
I do what I want, sucker. You just get out my face and let me do what I do.
And this movie also kind of brings up another sort of dichotomy between, in the comics between Marvel and DC. DC loves to take their most popular villains and turn them into heroes, and Marvel seems to love to take their heroes and always try to put them in villainous positions. They've done it with so many of their big characters. They really do a good job of that here in the movie.
Look, at this point, I'm just like, whatever Marvel wants to do, it clearly ain't broke. Don't try to fix what ain't broke.
And then what'd you think about Tony Stank?
Tony Stank. Oh, my gosh. Just, as always, a delight.
Yeah, who knows how many more of those cameos we have for Stan Lee, but he's the FedEx guy looking for Tony Stank.
Again, CGI has showed us that he will be in everyone from here on out. Even if it's just a little walk-by cameo where he's looking straight into the lens and like passing by just like while he's waving.
Well, how about that letter? I mean, the letter that Steve gives Tony at the end there. I mean, come on. Does it get more perfect than that?
No. stuff.
And I love it because it's setting up, when Infinity War hits, we're going to have our secret Avengers and we're going to have our official government Avengers, and they're going to have to work together once Thanos shows up. It's just really interesting. That post-credit scene, or that mid-credit scene, I should say, where we're taken to Wakanda. Bucky is being put into sort of a cryogenic sleep or some kind of suspended animation until Wakandan technology can fix him, which I think will be pretty quick given the state of Wakandan technology. I love it that at the end of the big battle in Russia and Siberia, that Cap just left his shield behind after Tony said those things about how his father made that shield. And then he goes to like the only place on Earth where you could get another shield like that made at the drop of a hat, and that's Wakanda.
I just think the good Lord, it's not a hologram shield. I was just like, please.
Oh, yeah. I was really hoping it wasn't a laser shield.
Please don't go to that.
How would you guys feel if it went back to sort of a triangular shaped shield?
I don't like it.
Fine.
Yeah, I would kind of like a triangular shield, so maybe he wouldn't use it like a whammo frisbee so much.
Nope, I don't like it. I like the whammo frisbee, and I like Spider-Man going, "Hey, dude, that doesn't even obey the laws of physics," and he's basically got to
awesome.
shut your mouth, Junior.
And in the comics, T'Challa did make like holographic wings for Falcon, so I hope they don't go that direction.
Really?
Speaking of Falcon, we never even mentioned the clever way they managed to get Red Wing into this movie because
oh my gosh, so great!
Falcon famously has his
bird.
Yeah, he famously has his little red falcon that he calls Red Wing, and they made him sort of a robotic apparatus that comes off of his backpack. They really did turn Falcon into sort of Iron Man light.
Perfect,
with all the technology.
Well, they did two things really smart in this movie. I thought also, three things, because I think that the Red Wing thing is awesome too. But having him use the wings as a shield, that was awesome.
Very good.
And also, the Marcus and McFeely, they don't start they don't skimp on the relationship that Falcon and Cap already have because Bucky is there now. Like, it's just an add-on. That was really smart, and that's really well done writing. And a lesser writer would have put him to the side.
And there's the feelings that the two of those have between, because Falcon is his friend and everything, and then your old buddy comes in, and it's like that thing, man. And he's sitting in the back seat of the old VW there, just going, "Hey, man, can you scoot your seat up?" And he just no. Just straight up. I mean, it's just like that old animosity of like, this is my friend, and this older friend comes in, and he's all buddy
and then
buddy
the part
with him
where
now.
Spider-Man has them both webbed to the ground, and he just goes, "I hate you so much."
Well, he goes, "You couldn't have done that 5 minutes ago."
I hate you so much. But anyway, at the end of Wakanda, the point I wanted to make is Cap looks at Black Panther, T'Challa, and he says, "They'll come for you." And then he just so confidently says, "Let them try." And then we go see the Black Panther idol in the side of the jungle there. And it just made me think about how ridiculously difficult it is to invade Wakanda in the comics. You guys, I'm sure, remember the Secret Invasion storyline where the Skrulls just came and had their way with all the heroes in the Marvel Universe. And they said, well, we just got one last little place to conquer. It'll be just kind of a mop-up detail. We just got to go to this place called Wakanda. And they get their Skrull buttholes handed to them by Black Panther. I mean, it's awesome how he just pulverizes the Skrulls when they attempt to invade Wakanda. I love that storyline. Probably my all-time favorite trade paperback I have of any Black Panther is that Secret Invasion, which I didn't like the overall story, but I love the attempted invasion of Wakanda because he just really, really kicked some Skrull butt and didn't even bother taking names.
So let me get this straight. These guys got really wrinkly, jaw lines. Okay, I got it.
And I'm pretty sure he used that exact same line when they said the Skrulls have conquered the rest of the world. They're going to come conquer Wakanda, and he says, "Let them try." Essentially, kind of like one of those great comebacks that the Spartans would have for the Persians or for some of maybe the Macedonians back in ancient Greece. I just love that confidence, that laconic speech, so to say.
Or when The Rock says, "Can you smell what The Rock is cooking?"
You left out a few la-la-la-la-la-las on that
one. That's true. Well, I got to save the theatrical performances for later.
Yeah, well, I've got my own people's elbow, so let's maybe we should start wrapping this one up. Want to talk about?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, let's get to the final button of this. The kind of I thought was fairly unexpected. We get some Spider-Man action going on.
Yeah, and of course, I'm encouraged to know that RDJ is going to be in Spider-Man: Homecoming. I'm also encouraged that for the foreseeable future, they've intimately interlocked the character of Iron Man and Spider-Man, and they've given him that little watch that does that Spider-Man hologram, which is kind of straight from 70s comics. I'm very, very excited for Spider-Man: Homecoming. I'll be honest, I don't know who's directing it, so anything can happen. But if they're able to keep any of the goodwill that they've built up for Tom Holland as Peter Parker in this movie going in Homecoming, it's going to be the biggest and the best Spider-Man movie they've ever done.
I mean, it's here's the thing. It's like you've gotten everything seems to be working right, man. It is one of those things where I always say, until you start screwing up, go ahead and keep on keeping on. You know what I'm saying? John Watts is going to be the director of that, not the John Watts that I knew back in high school.
Who's the guy?
John Watts is the director's name.
I'm not familiar with him.
The biggest thing that people know that he did was Cop Car with Kevin Bacon last year. It's very
you can't go wrong with that guy.
Small independent thing.
Well, even if they could just get one Russo brother, I'd be encouraged. You don't have to get both.
Give me
Do they have a third brother
I
somewhere?
was about to say, give me the Russo sister.
Yeah,
and,
give me Renee. Is she their sister?
Give me Dot.
Oh man, they did name drop Dottie Stevens in this movie from Agent Carter.
We didn't even talk about the funeral of Peggy Carter, man. Who
or
else?
The creepiness of within hours making out with her grandniece.
Hey man, sometimes he did. In all fairness, she was across the hall from him for quite some time. So.
But I will say that for all practical purposes, I assumed that Peggy was dead in The Winter Soldier. So this was kind of felt a little bit like a plot coupon here just to introduce something else into the movie. I think they probably could have streamlined through that somehow.
You're a heartless monster. I've cried like a baby.
Honestly, this is another one of those points where if it was a lesser movie, people would be commenting more on that funeral. But because there's so much good stuff here, it's easy to even forget about it.
This much is true.
And it's also the moment where Steve is his philosophy is cemented, where he already believes what he believes, but hearing Peggy say the same thing.
And I could also hear him say, for the first time in 74 years, I'm back on the market, ladies. Where's your niece at?
But I also liked. This is something that it was so funny because I go to see all the comic book movies with my dad and my brother because it's just what we do. But we were talking while we were waiting in line there about how all the buttons on the end of these things, and we're like, it's always that thing that makes you want to come back, makes you want to get a little bit more. And we mentioned how in all the James Bond movies and stuff, you'd wait to the end of the credits with James Bond. You say James Bond will return, usually in fill-in title here. And to get that button and then they fade to black and fade up from black to titles that said Spider-Man will return is just was amazing.
They have really, really, really managed to cement that bond with Sony somehow. I did not think it would be as strong of a relationship as it looks like it's going to be.
Yeah.
There's also part of me that worries, though, because this Spider-Man Homecoming is going to have a huge box office. There's no two ways around it. Just as a reality check, Amazing Spider-Man, the first Garfield Spider-Man movie, is currently the reigning box office king of Spider-Man movies, and this is going to outperform that. So they might get a little cocky and say, you know what, we don't need Feige anymore, and then it could go off the rails real quick.
I think they're
let them try.
Yeah, I think they're
quote Chala.
I think they're stupid to do that, but I think they realize when they can sit back and essentially collect royalties off of someone else doing all the hard legwork that they've clearly shown their own lack of ability to do. I think they'll be okay with that check coming in, just going, oh wait, it prints money and you're going to do all the work. I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that they're going to have Robert Downey Jr. in it to build on what they've laid down such a strong foundation for here of it being part of the MCU.
Yeah, it's a really smart move.
Keep them there as long as you can, kids. And of course, and there's more stuff coming, man. That's
and they really need to get on the phone with Fox so that Ryan Reynolds can have a cameo in Infinity War Part 2.
Well, let's talk about a couple things. So, there's even been people saying, "Hey, man, Wolverine might be in one of the, it's few and far between, but there may be a chance where in the movies we may see Wolverine die off and then come back in an Avengers movie."
Well, that is probably the only way you can get audiences to accept Hugh Jackman leaving the character. Because Hugh Jackman leaving the character, they're never going to embrace a new Wolverine at Fox. But if you bring him in with this Marvel Cinematic Universe where people say, it's a little give and take. Yeah, we have to give up Hugh Jackman, but now we get him in the shared universe. I think that's one way to make that transition smooth.
There's so many things that's what's so fun about this Marvel Cinematic Universe is that we've spent the last 8 years playing this elaborate game of chess, and it's not even close to being over, man. There's just so much stuff that's going through, and they seem to be just hitting it out of the park every single time, and like just the batting average is unbelievable with this entire universe, man. And
maybe they can finally cast a short person for Wolverine when they redo it.
Maybe.
Glenn Danzig's still in shape, man.
He's still in shape at probably 70 years old.
72 years old,
there
yeah.
You go.
To say, isn't he slightly older than Hugh Jackman?
Just on a wee bit. But yeah, man. So let's get down to it. Before we do though, we need to find out how this movie relates back. I don't know how they're going to do it with 8 billion cast members, but how this movie relates back to our good friend Sylvester Stallone.
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh, okay.
Captain America Civil War is not Marissa Tomei's first superhero movie. In 1984, she played the role of health club girl in The Toxic Avenger, a movie that spawned 3 more sequels.
Ugh.
Marissa Tomei did not reprise her role for any of the follow-up films, mainly because she showed a modicum of acting prowess and was airlifted from the franchise like the heart of an organ donor to a rich person. Marissa Tomei got into most people's radar by playing the role of Maggie on the spinoff to The Cosby Show, A Different World. No word yet if she got Cosby'd, but I think that we can all agree he totally thought about it. And I'm guessing that most HMPers have a vague recollection of A Different World, sort of a hazy, you remember watching an episode or two type understanding of that show. But I really can't state this enough. The character of Dwayne Wayne was a cultural phenomenon for about 2 years. Seriously.
I had my glasses.
He was the biggest thing on television.
It's true.
He was the equivalent to Game of Thrones. I don't mean a character on Game of Thrones. I mean he was as big as the television show Game of Thrones. Which should tell you just how starved for entertainment we all were in the late 80s. Marissa Tomei has had one of the craziest careers Hollywood has ever seen. She's in My Cousin Vinny, but she's also in Adam Sandler's Anger Management. She's in the biopic Chaplin, but she's also in what I consider to be the most unfunny comedy ever made, Wild Hogs, a movie that somehow made $243 million worldwide. I think of things like that whenever someone asks me, Sean, why do you hate people? But I really like Marissa Tomei, and while I've never met the woman, I've heard good things. Although one of the things I have almost nothing nice to say about is the movie Oscar, starring the only man to ever describe Burgess Meredith as a stick man, Sylvester Stallone. Now, the production of 1991's Oscar had its own troubles, but in a crazy twist of fate, it had nothing to do with Mama Stallone's second favorite son. One night after filming wrapped on a typical day of shooting on Oscar, a fire destroyed several of the Oscar sets, a few of the actors' trailers, including Tim Curry's, all of the costumes, and 21 vintage cars.
Jeez.
Production stopped for 2 weeks so they could remake the costumes and the sets. A Universal security guard was hired to watch over the cars, later admitted to setting the fire.
Nice.
So it looks like 2 people were fired that day. Security guard and the guy who did the screening at Universal's Human Resources Department. Can you imagine what that exit interview must have looked like? So, Phil, we want to talk to you about the incident. Why would you have hired that guy? Do you want to tell us your side of the story? Well, I asked him if he planned on burning the studio to the ground, and he started licking his lips and laughing and rubbing his hands together, but he said no. Things seemed fine to me. Marissa Tomei plays the role of Lisa Provolone, the daughters to Sylvester Stallone's character, Angelo Provolone, who is married to one of Bruce Leslie's favorite actresses, Ornella Moody.
Yeah.
Who, while only being 9 years older than Marissa Tomei, plays the role of her mom. One last thing about this movie, and something that I find cool, is that Kirk Douglas plays Stallone's father in Oscar, and the two had only appeared in one movie before, but it ended terribly, where there were snakes everywhere and everything was on fire and there was a lot of crying. You see, Kirk Douglas was originally supposed to play the role of Troutman in the movie First Blood, but he quit after a dispute over whether Rambo should die at the end. I love this story. It's a fight between old Hollywood and new Hollywood, and unfortunately, old Hollywood lost, but Kirk Douglas got his revenge. At the AFI Lifetime Achievement Awards in 1991, Kirk Douglas was the honoree. Stallone took the stage and recounted a story on the set of Oscar where the two were filming a scene where he's supposed to slap Stallone in the face, but Kirk Douglas missed. Stallone jokingly told Douglas to slap him hard and actually said the words, "Let me have your best." The very next moment, Douglas proceeded to beat the living crap out of Stallone. Stallone, coming down from his 80s coke high, said, "I learned the hard way, never spar with Spartacus." Which leads me to ask the question, did Kirk Douglas take the role in Oscar specifically to get his revenge on Stallone? Or did he beat Stallone silly because Stallone challenged his manhood and Kirk Douglas wanted to show Mr. Hollywood what a tough guy really is? We'll probably never know, but either way, it ends with Stallone getting the bejesus kicked out of him by a 75-year-old man. So there you have it, HMPers, this week's Stallone connection. Now, Peter Porker and the Spectacular Spider-Ham, let's review this movie so we can begin talking off air of our burgeoning media empire.
Indeed, indeed. And here's the thing, man. I think Kirk Douglas took that just to, on account of he's just an old timer who's going to do whatever he wants to do, and I think just beating people is just kind of it's just from his era, it's just from his time, man. He can't help it. That's how you show affection, Bruce.
Yeah.
What kind of affection will you be showing to Captain America Civil War? Okay, well, I forgot to mention, since this is probably many people's first time episode listening to this, we don't have stars, we don't have letters or any grades and stuff like that. We have a completely arbitrary system that we've made up called the Robin Rating Scale. If you want to check it out, go to facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. Right there, the top little banner, there's a picture. Click on that bad boy and look how it lays out. Bruce, where on the HMP official Robin Rating System does Captain America Civil War fall for you, sir?
I gotta be honest, it starts getting tough for me to do these big Marvel pictures because I feel like I'm not even putting thought into it. I'm just a shill. I'm still a little embarrassed that I gave Age of Ultron a Dick Grayson the first time around. Thank goodness I got to adjust it. But I feel like I almost feel like I know it's going to be a Dick Grayson before I go into this movie, and then I find evidence to support it. And I tried to think about maybe a few negative things to put in there so I'm not just like a rah-rah guy. There were a couple of moments that I think it drug for some folks. Maybe if you were not a huge superhero movie fan, you might feel a little lost in the jumble here. I think to somebody who's just a fan of cinema in general, they're going to say Winter Soldier was the better movie. But for a comic book fan, man, this is a comic book on the screen. This is right up there with the first Avengers movie, only with maybe a little bit more drama put in there. I love the unraveling of Tony Stark that isn't just in this movie. I can't see it as a standalone movie. If I was on the fence between Tim Drake and Dick Grayson, Spider-Man just he clobbered the Tim Drake side of things. This is going to be a Dick Grayson. I'm aware that maybe people are starting to think I don't even really try and I'm giving these guys a pass. I tried hard to justify making this anything but a Dick Grayson, and I just can't do it because to a comic book fan, this and the first Avengers movie are the two movies that are closest to the experience of reading a comic book I've ever seen.
Very well, Mr. Keenan.
I'm really close to Bruce's methodology here, because I was about to go into this tonight with only having seen it one time. And I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I saw it twice. Because the first time I walked out of that movie theater, the very first thing I thought was, that's the greatest comic book movie I've ever seen.
A lot of people are saying that. Yeah.
Yes, and they are, but they're saying that with one viewing, because when you go and see it again, you start to see a little of the shine come off of the movie.
I feel like there was going to be that being said, and then he just kind of disappeared.
I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay. I thought, man, that is a dramatic pause.
Threw us for a loop.
Whew.
I had a call coming in, and as you guys know, I use dial-up here.
Out in the Ozarks, yeah.
So it's still a Dick Grayson. It's not the best comic book movie ever made, but it is great. And so it's a Dick Grayson all day.
Well, having only seen it once, I wish I would have seen it on Saturday. I had the time, but I just didn't make it to go do it. Without really going into it too much. I mean, you guys have already said it. I think I got to go Dick Grayson on this, just because, I mean, like I said, this is the longest Marvel movie to date, and never once did I I don't want to say never once did I feel like, oh no, this is like dragging on too long, but I was never bored. I was never I never got to a point where I was just like, man, I wish they'd hurry up and get to X. Everything was just laid out perfectly. I thought Zemo was a good enough a villain without being mustache twirly or anything, because at the ultimate end of the day, the villain was, the inner fighting, the Civil War, if you will, amongst everybody. It worked as well as it could. Everybody got great. I think the balancing act they did with as many characters as they did was unbelievably good. I can't wait to see what they do in these, Infinity War or whatever we eventually renamed them, because that's what they've said that they're going to do now. However many characters we have in that, and what the balancing act that they can do with that.
Oh, for God's sake, get to the end here.
I already did it. All right, good. It's Dick Grayson.
It's like 17 hours we've been reviewing this movie.
Listen, this is like a fourth of what old Film Find episodes would be, so you thank your lucky stars.
Yeah, and how many people were listening to that show?
6 people. Give me a break. Now 8 listen. All right. So high regards all around and everything, and people on the Facebook page, man, they seem to like it, and you can also join that at facebook.com/HeroMoviePodcast. Throw us a like up on there. We're almost at 2,000 likes and everything. Drop us a 5-star review on the iTunes, aka Humdinger. Very good. We got a Humdinger shirt out now. TeePublic. Check it out. It's on that Facebook page there. There's a link to that. And get yourself a swanky little shirt there. Give yourself or somebody else a Humdinger. That sounded wrong until I said
Hello.
it. Yeah. And I'm like, there we are.
We're talking to you, Aunt May. We're talking to you, Aunt May.
Darn tootin'. Okay, so next week we're not quite sure what we're doing yet. We haven't really talked about it, but we've got something coming up pretty soon. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. Until then, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week, sir?
Oh, Heroes and Villains, where the focus is on characters. Going to have an episode. Actually, it's just went up this morning. So there's an episode out about Tim Drake, if you want to hear a little bit about the guy behind one of our Robin ratings. Also, Chubby Wizard. Go to chubbywizard.com. Check out the excellent podcast, Chubby Wizard. We focus a little bit more on movies here. At Chubby Wizard, we focus a little bit more on comic books and comic book television. So go check that out if you haven't yet.
Very good, Mr. Keenan.
You can reach me at Twitter at Hero Movie Sean. I have my own YouTube channel called Angry Gay Spider-Man, where we do a new video every single weekday. Check that out.
Good stuff.
And coming soon is handsomeboykeenan.com.
First of all, and I'll say this, my favorite Angry Gay Spider-Man so far is Pewter. I don't know why. It just strikes me. I've probably watched it 6 times just by myself. Just going, that's good stuff. It's good stuff. My other podcast, The Film Find at thefilmfind.com. This week, get this, guys. We're going to be reviewing Captain America. So we'll be talking about that and some other things as well. So why don't you head on down to thefilmfind.com and do that. I know a lot of listeners have done so, and I appreciate it. More is always better. So thank you for that. And guys, we got a podcast that's going to be launching fairly soon here. You'll hear the first episode probably on this feed and everything. But Preacher is coming to AMC, and it's becoming more and more and more real. It's so much so real that they invited us to the premiere. Now, none of us can really go because it's like, wow, really? You're going to give me like
you
a week and a half?
Me yet.
Well, I sent a text to you.
What do we have? 10 days notice to get to New York?
Yeah, 10 days notice
We're
just.
We're gonna talk about that off air.
Fair enough. So yeah, man. So go to preacherpodcast.com or facebook.com/preacherpodcast. Drop us a like there and everything. So if you're a fan of this show, if you're a fan of the Film Find, it's going to be a merging of those things together. It's going to be the three of us and Matt Smith from my other show, put all together in one big happy family here to review a show about a comic that a lot of people like. And if you dig on The Walking Dead and you're not familiar with Preacher, give it a shot, man, because chances are it's probably going to be right up your alley.
And Sean, I'm putting you on notice. You got to get a good arseface impersonation ready.
Yeah, get that on lock. But so yeah, man, there's lots of that coming and everything. Stay tuned here, moviepodcast.com and all that kind of good stuff. That is it, everybody. Until next week, for Bruce Leslie, Sean Keenan, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Oh, hey, everybody. Before you shut us off here, when we go to song, we're going to be playing voicemail after the song is over. Please listen to that. You are going to have a much better chance to get onto our show if your voicemail message is less than a minute long.
This is true. But yes, thank you for that. And so executive producer coming up after the song. And so, yeah, again, thanks for Sean for putting for me because I'm stupid and forget things and don't write things down. Thanks, buddy. You're always got my back. I appreciate it. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty. Good evening.
My hands are tied. The billion ship from side to side, and the wars go on with brainwashed pride for the love of God and a human right. And all these things are swept aside by bloody heads. Time can't deny and are washed away by a genocide. And history hides the lies of our civil war.
Good afternoon, y'all. This is Beta Fu from the great state of Texas, here with my thoughts on Captain America Civil War. First of all, Spider-Man, awesome. Probably the best Spider-Man. I think easily the best Spider-Man we've seen on film. For some reason, the teenage Spider-Man is just kind of really compelling, especially with that authentic Queen's accent. I just really, really dug it. Ant-Man, also awesome, sort of a foil, I think, for the others in terms of his experience and his just sort of wide-eyed enthusiasm about what's going on. There was a solid build-up, I thought, to the sort of ethical dilemmas between the two main characters, and it really benefited from the dozen or so films that led up to it. So in that vein, it was kind of super successful. I felt a little off about Zemo. I'm not entirely sure why. For some reason, the character never really sort of struck me. I understood his, compulsion and kind of where he was coming from. Maybe it was just the name Zemo. I'm not entirely sure why that was. The airport scene, by and large, the best comic book fight scene I think we've ever seen. Probably argue maybe it was one of the best fight scenes ever. Really, really, really well done. My wife didn't enjoy it as much as I did. I'm not sure if that's because there was a lot of sort of deep cuts. There was a lot of kind of comic book history stuff like the Queen's accent that I think really just jacked up my enthusiasm for the film. So maybe that's what that was. I'm not entirely sure. She felt that it was kind of a little slow at times and preferred Winter Soldier to Civil War. Other than that, I really dug it. I thought it was awesome. I plan on seeing it again a few more times, and I thought it was great. Anyway, y'all take care.
Homicide.
reckless selective annihilation of mayors and government officials, for example, to create a vacuum. Then we fill that vacuum. As popular war advances, peace is closer.
I don't need a civil war. It feeds the rich while it buries the poor. Power hungry, telling soldiers in a human grocery store ain't that bread. I don't need your civil war. No, 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 no. I don't need your civil war. I don't need your civil war. Your power hungry, telling soldiers in a human grocery store ain't that bread. I don't need your civil war. No, 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 no. I don't need one more war.
What's so civil about war anyway?